Black mechanic fixes rich man's Ferrari for free. Years later, he gets a shocking call. The midday sun beat down over the cracked asphalt of the small, independently owned auto shop on the corner of Monroe and Fifth. Inside the garage, the air was heavy with the familiar scent of motor oil, rubber, and hard work. Tools clinked, engines hummed, and in the middle of it all stood Elijah Brooks, a tall, muscular man in his late 30s with calloused hands and a face that bore both grit and quiet wisdom. Elijah wasn't the type to brag, but word around town was that he could coax life back into any engine, no matter how hopeless it looked. His reputation wasn't built on flashy ads or a big brand name, just honesty, dedication, and the kind of skill you couldn't teach in a classroom. Eli called Tanya from the front desk, peeking around the corner. "You got someone here skin about a Ferrari, and he looks like he just stepped out of a Wall Street magazine." Elijah wiped the grease from his hands, raising an eyebrow. "Ferrari? Here." Stepping outside, he saw it. A gleaming red Ferrari 488 Spider idling quietly by the curb. Behind the wheel sat a sharply dressed white man in his 50s, wearing designer sunglasses and looking entirely out of place on this side of town. "Mr. Brooks?" the man asked as he stepped out, his shoes crunching lightly against the gravel. "I'm Richard Langston. I was told you're the best mechanic around." Elijah gave a polite nod. "Depends who told you that." Langston smirked. "Let's just say, after 4 different shops gave me nothing but headaches, your name came up from someone I trust." The engine was sputtering, just barely, and the diagnostics were clearly giving mixed signals. Elijah took a long look under the hood, his hands moving with a confidence born from years of problem-solving. "See that?" he finally said, pointing to a hidden sensor. "It's your manifold pressure sensor. You've got a short, simple fix." Langston blinked. "That's it?" Everyone else wanted to replace half the engine. Elijah shrugged. "That's 'cause they saw the car before they saw the problem." He walked back into the shop, grabbed the right part. One he kept not for Ferraris, but because he believed in being prepared, and 20 minutes later, the Ferrari purred like a tiger in a silk suit. "How much do I owe you?" Langston asked, pulling out a thick money clip. Elijah hesitated. "No charge." Langston furrowed his brow. "You're joking." "I'm not. You drove across town. Probably didn't think much of the area or this shop. But you still gave me a shot. That means something. And besides," Elijah added with a warm smile, "wasn't that hard?" Langston looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable passing behind his eyes, then slowly put the money away. "You ever need anything, Mr. Brooks, call me." He handed Elijah a card, embossed with gold. Then, without another word, he stepped into the Ferrari and drove away, the engine now whispering smooth perfection. Elijah tucked the card into a drawer, unsure why he kept it. Years would pass before he understood. 2 years had slipped by like oil down a drain since Elijah last saw Richard Langston or that spotless red Ferrari. Life at Brooks Auto and Repair had continued on its steady rhythm. A flat tire here, a busted radiator there, the occasional engine overhaul for loyal customers who trusted no one else to touch their cars. Elijah had never chased wealth. He chased peace. And under the buzz of fluorescent lights, surrounded by the whirring of air compressors and the smell of rubber, he'd found his version of it. Still, that card Langston gave him, the one with the raised gold lettering, stayed in the same drawer, untouched but never thrown away. He didn't know why. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Tanya brought him coffee. His younger cousin Marcus, fresh out of trade school, showed up late with half an apology and grease on his shirt before even clocking in. A beat-up Chevy Malibu was on the lift, its brake lines rusted through. Then the phone rang. Brooks Auto, how can I help you? Tanya answered, her voice routine. There was a long silence. Tanya's tone shifted. Elijah, you might want to take this one. He walked over, wiping his hands on a rag. Yeah, Elijah speaking. Mr. Brooks, said a crisp, calm voice. This is Rachel Langston, Richard Langston's daughter. That name, Langston, pulled him back like a sudden gust through an open window. I'm calling because, well, my father had a heart attack last night. He's alive, but it was serious. He mentioned you more than once, actually. Elijah leaned against the counter, unsure what to say. I'm sorry to hear that. Didn't know y'all kept track of me. Rachel gave a short laugh, but it was brittle with emotion. He never forgot. He always said, that man fixed more than my car. He reminded me who I used to be. I didn't really understand it until recently. There was a pause. He wanted to talk to you. Would you consider coming to see him? We'll cover your travel and hotel. Elijah hesitated. His world had always been this neighborhood, this garage. But something in Rachel's voice, the same quiet urgency that had been in her father's all those years ago, made him say yes before he fully understood why. By Thursday afternoon, Elijah was standing in the gleaming marble lobby of St. Jude's private medical center in Manhattan, a place that felt like another planet. Everyone wore suits. Every step echoed. A man offered him cucumber water while he waited. Then a nurse guided him to the VIP floor. Richard Langston lay in a sleek hospital bed, monitors softly beeping, tubes gently trailing into his arms. His face, thinner now, lit up when Elijah walked in. Still don't charge for house calls? He rasped, a smile in his eyes. Elijah chuckled. Depends if there's an engine in this room. Richard laughed and coughed, waving him closer. I never forgot what you did, he said, voice weak but clear. Not just the fix, but the fact that you didn't look at me like I was just a wallet. You treated me like a person. That day meant more than you know. Elijah said nothing, letting the moment breathe. Richard continued, I want to talk to you about something important, not just as a man, but as someone who's made a lot of mistakes. He reached to the nightstand, pulling out a folder. I need your help with something big. And just like that, Elijah realized this wasn't about a car. Not anymore. The folder Richard handed Elijah was thick, heavy in the way things become when burdened with consequence. Inside were blueprints, financials, a few NDAs, and a hand-drawn sketch of something that looked like a cross between a high-tech garage and a community center. Richard gestured weakly toward the pages. I've been working on this idea for almost a year. I call it the Turning Point. It's part mentorship program, part training facility, a way to help kids from working-class neighborhoods learn trades, real ones, mechanics, electricians, even coding, not just books and speeches, but hands-on work. It's what I wish I had when I was young and dumb. Elijah flipped through the sketches, his expression unreadable. This supposed to be some kind of legacy project? A way to clean the slate before the curtain drops. Richard didn't flinch. Yes and no. I'm not dying, Elijah. Not yet. But I got scared. When the doctors told me it was close, that I might not make it to the morning, my first thought wasn't my money or my company or the houses. It was that I might leave this world without ever doing something that actually mattered. He paused, breathing shallowly. And I couldn't build this alone. I need someone who knows the world I'm trying to reach. Someone people can trust. You want me to run it? Elijah asked, skeptical. I want you to build it with me. Elijah closed the folder slowly. You're talking about hiring me to clean your conscience. Richard chuckled. I'm asking you to build something better than me." There was a long silence. Elijah stood, hands in his jacket, looking out the window at the city skyline. The hospital room smelled like money, polished surfaces, filtered air, silence bought by privilege. It was a world away from his shop, from the loud music Marcus played when he worked, from the smell of burnt oil and fresh tires. "Let me think on it," Elijah said at last. "This isn't something you say yes to over bad hospital coffee." Preview text for YouTube thumbnail. Black mechanic walks into billionaire's hospital room. What he said changed everything. Back at his motel that night, Elijah couldn't sleep. He lay on the stiff mattress staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the last 2 days. Tanya had called to check in. Marcus texted him a photo of a carburetor he'd managed to rebuild, with 3 question marks and a proud emoji. Life kept moving, but something stirred in him. He remembered the first time he touched an engine. He'd been 9, and his uncle's old Ford wouldn't start. Elijah had climbed under the hood like it was a puzzle meant just for him. When it roared back to life, he'd felt invincible, useful, needed. And now, here was a man with all the power in the world, asking Elijah to help build something. Not for profits, not for pride, but for purpose. The next morning, Elijah returned to the hospital. Richard looked worse, tired, paler, quieter, but he smiled when Elijah entered. "I'm in," Elijah said simply. The older man closed his eyes, as if a weight had been lifted. They spent the rest of the morning mapping out ideas, where the facility could be built, which neighborhoods needed it most, who to bring in as mentors. Elijah insisted it be rooted in community, not charity. "We don't need saviors," he said. "We need support." By noon, Richard was asleep, for still dripping. Elijah walked out quietly, the folder now filled with their combined notes tucked under his arm. This wasn't about a free Ferrari anymore. It was about fixing something far more broken. 2 weeks had passed since Elijah returned to Houston, but his world hadn't slowed down. It had only shifted. The garage was still open by 7 a.m. Still smelled of motor oil and rubber, still filled with the same busted sedans and half-finished pickup trucks. But there was a new stack of blueprints pinned to the wall in the back office, a constant reminder that something much bigger was beginning. Richard's health had stabilized, enough to begin remote meetings, though he often coughed through them and needed to pause to catch his breath. Still, every time his face appeared on the video call, friendlier, yes, but sharp, Elijah was reminded of the strange bond forming between them. What started with a chance encounter over a Ferrari had turned into a partnership neither of them saw coming. But not everyone was ready to believe in redemption. "You're telling me Richard Calloway, the same guy who gentrified East Ridge and pushed my grandma out of her home, is suddenly the hero of the story?" Marcus asked one afternoon, leaning against a tool cart, arms crossed. Elijah wiped grease off his hands and sighed. "He's not a hero, and I don't trust him completely. But I've seen what happens when nobody builds anything in our neighborhoods. I've seen kids with gold in their hands turn to rust because no one taught them how to shape it." Marcus shook his head. "You really believe people like that change?" "I don't know," Elijah said honestly, "but I believe in building something that doesn't depend on them staying the same." Together with a small team of local educators, tradespeople, and youth mentors, Elijah began crafting the early curriculum for the Turning Point. It would be a 6-month, full-time vocational program housed in a refurbished warehouse donated anonymously, though Elijah was certain Richard had quietly pulled strings. There'd be classes in auto repair, electrical work, welding, and even basic financial literacy. No fluff, no motivational speakers, unless they'd ever turned a wrench or written a resume that got someone a real job. Word started spreading. A story appeared in a small community newspaper, Local mechanic and billionaire launch unlikely program for at-risk youth. A few kids dropped by the garage curious. A mother came to shake Elijah's hand. Another father left an envelope with $20 and a note. For tools. Keep going. Late one evening, as Elijah closed up shop, his phone buzzed. It was Richard's assistant. Elijah? He's asking for you. Said it couldn't wait. Elijah's heart sank. Is he okay? The voice on the other end faltered. You should come. When Elijah walked into the hospital room, it was eerily quiet. The machines beeped softly. Richard's skin was pale, and for the first time he looked truly fragile, like something might crack if you spoke too loudly. I didn't think I'd get to see it, Richard rasped. The place. The kids. You still might, Elijah said, pulling a chair beside him. You're stubborn enough to outlive the rest of us. Richard gave a thin smile. There's a file. In the drawer there. Signatures. Ownership rights. If anything happens. Elijah took the folder, but his hand was shaking. We're not doing this now. You're not going anywhere tonight. I just needed you to know, Richard said, coughing. That car you fixed. It was the first time someone saw me as just a guy with a problem, not a man with a name. I didn't know who you were. That's what made it real. There was silence between them, thick, but not uncomfortable. Then Richard asked softly, if you could go back to that day, would you still fix it? For free. Elijah looked at him and for a long time said nothing. Then finally, I didn't fix the car for you. I fixed it because I'm a mechanic. That's what I do. A weak laugh escaped Richard's lips. God, I needed that. They both sat quietly. Outside the hospital window, the city blinked. Somewhere, sirens wailed. Life moved forward. Elijah didn't know if Richard would be there to see the opening of the turning point. But he did know that whether or not the man who sparked it remained, the fire had already started. The air buzzed with quiet excitement. In the heart of Houston's Fifth Ward, a once-abandoned warehouse now gleamed with new life. A fresh coat of paint, giant bay doors, rows of donated tools, and a banner across the front that read, The Turning Point. A new future starts here. Elijah stood in front of it all, his hands stuffed into his coverall pockets, unsure if he was dreaming. What had started as an act of kindness, fixing a stranger's broken-down Ferrari on a hot day, had unfolded into something no one, not even him, could have scripted. Behind him, a crowd gathered. Families, kids, community leaders, journalists, old friends and skeptical neighbors who'd once doubted the idea now stood with cameras and hopeful eyes. Marcus was there too, wearing a Turning Point hoodie, his arms crossed, but this time in quiet pride. Elijah stepped up to the mic. I was raised by a woman who believed hands could speak. He began, voice steady but low. She fixed what was broken with grace, with grit, and she taught me that the work we do, when done in truth, can outlive even our names. He paused, swallowed emotion. This program isn't charity. It's not about saving people. It's about building. We don't need saving, we need opportunity, and that starts here. The crowd applauded, but Elijah's eyes drifted to the side of the stage, where a tall, broad-shouldered man stood quietly. His presence stole Elijah's breath. It was Aaron Calloway, Richard's son. He walked over after the ceremony ended, dressed in a simple blazer and jeans, nothing flashy, nothing performative, just real. My father didn't make it, he said softly, shaking Elijah's hand. But he left instructions. He wanted me to see it through. Elijah nodded, unable to speak for a moment. The words stung, but so did the unexpected comfort in seeing someone carry the flame. I didn't expect you to come, Elijah said. Aaron shrugged. I didn't expect you to fix his car. They both laughed quietly, the kind of laughter that comes only after time has reshaped old wounds. As the sun began to dip behind the rooftops, the warehouse doors rolled open, revealing the pristine workstations and the first class of students. 16 boys and girls in coveralls, wide-eyed, curious, ready to learn. Some of them looked just like Elijah had at 17. He walked in first, stood behind a workbench, held up a socket wrench. This, he said, is more than a tool. It's a key. Let's get to work. Later that night, Elijah sat alone in the office, feet up on the desk, a photo of his mother on the wall. The Ferrari key still hung on a nail beside it, untouched but never forgotten. He thought of Richard. He thought of what it meant to give without expecting, and how one man's broken engine had cracked open a future no one had imagined. The garage was quiet again, but something in the silence had changed. It wasn't the end. It was only the beginning.